Hello and welcome to Chapter 3 of the OpenStax Lifespan Development textbook. Today we're going over physical and cognitive development in infants and toddlers from birth to age 3. You can find a link to the free textbook in the description below. Thank you, OpenStax, for providing this free resource for students. Let's begin. Figure 3.1. Children undergo drastic changes during the period from infancy to toddlerhood. While these three sets of infants and toddler siblings share similar genetics and environments, differences in their development demonstrate the interplay between nature and nurture. Let's look at a chapter outline before we dive in. 3.1 will look into physical development in infants and toddlers, 3.2 motor development, 3.3 sensory development, 3.4 cognition and memory, and 3.5 language. Physical development in infants and toddlers will dive into the following. We're going to identify patterns of physical growth in infants and toddlers, describe sleep patterns and safe practices for putting a young child to sleep, describe eating patterns and factors that influence eating preferences, and as well as typical brain growth and maturation in infants and toddlerhood, and finally identify health risks in the first 2 years of life. Figure 3.2. Proximodistal growth occurs at the center of the body before the extremities, whereas cephalocaudal growth begins at the head of the body before moving to the lower body. 3.3. Signs of teething in infants include sore gums, flushed cheeks, rubbing of ears, more than usual dribbling, and poor sleep. Figure 3.4. Look across these two sets of pictures of the same child growing from infancy to toddlerhood. Some common milestones across this period include raising the upper body, standing while holding onto an object for support, increasing development of fine motor skills, and growth in gross motor skills. What changes are apparent? Figure 3.5. This is the WHO chart for girls from birth to age 24 months. What is the typical length, height, and weight for a 12-month-old? Table 3.1. Typical sleep patterns for newborn to 2 years old. We're going to look at firstly the age, look at nighttime sleep, daytime sleep, and then finally the total sleep. Now newborns, nighttime sleep includes 8 to 9 hours, and daytime sleep includes 8 hours for a total of 16 hours. At 3 months, nighttime includes 9 to 10 hours, daytime 4 to 5, for a total of 15 hours. At 6 months, 10 hours of nighttime sleep, 4 hours of daytime sleep, for a total of 14. At 9 months, we have 11 hours of nighttime, 3 of daytime, for a total of 14. 1 year, we have 11 hours of nighttime, 3 hours of daytime, for a total of, once again, 14. At 1.5, we have nighttime hours of 11, daytime sleep of 2.5 for a total of 13.5. And then finally, at 2 years, nighttime sleep of 11, daytime sleep of 2 for a total of 13 hours. Figure 3.6, a child swaddled in a blanket for sleep. Some blankets are made for this very purpose. Table 3.2, bedtime routines. We're going to look at bedtime activity and we're going to describe it. Swaddling is whenever we wrap an infant in a blanket to reduce movement and should typically be stopped when the infant can turn over. Next bedtime activity is rocking. This includes holding the baby while swaying or rocking them in a cradle. Bathing is giving a bath before bed, perhaps adding a gentle massage. Reading, for example, just reading a simple story. Singing, this includes singing a lullaby or other quiet song. Darkening the room. This signals to the brain to release sleep hormones as well as reducing the possibilities of environmental stimulation. Playing a sound machine, using only enough volume to mask other noises. And finally, feeding. This includes breastfeeding or bottle feeding until the baby is asleep. Figure 3.7. Look at a breakdown of sudden, unexpected infant deaths by cause in 2020. 41% includes sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS for short. 32% is an unknown cause, and then 27% is accidental suffocation and strangulation in bed. Sudden unexpected infant deaths, or SUIDs, include deaths attributed to sudden infant death syndrome, as well as the suffocation and strangulation deaths. However, Almost one-third of SUIDs occur from no known cause. Table 3.3. Look at the benefits of human milk and formula. To the left, we're going to start with human milk, and then we're going to go on down, and then we'll look at formula. With human milk, benefits include digestion. Human milk contains balanced nutrients that are easily digested by young infants. Immunity. Human milk contains immunoglobulins that provide immunity to many diseases. Financial cost. Human milk may be less expensive or have no cost, though pumping supplies do entail a cost. Convenience. Human milk, when breastfed, is the correct temperature, requires no extra equipment, and can be delivered immediately when nursing parent and baby are together. Attachment. Human milk provided by breastfeeding releases oxytocin that promotes bonding. And maternal health. Breastfeeding has been associated with a reduced risk of breast and ovarian cancers. Now let's look at formula. Timing is a benefit. Formula takes longer to digest, so infants can go longer between feedings and sleep for longer duration. The caregiver's diet. The caregiver doesn't need to worry about what they are eating or drinking, including alcohol. The options for formula comes in ranges of options, such as for infants with allergies or infants needing more calories for weight gain. Convenience, so anyone can feed the baby, which can distribute the caregiving load. Formula, when bottle fed, can also be delivered without privacy concerns in public settings. When it comes to attachment, any primary giver can use a bottle or chest feeding technique with formula, which can promote bonding for all caregivers. Maternal comfort or lifestyle. Formula provides a healthy option for those who cannot or prefer not to breastfeed or provide human milk. Figure 3.8. These are the signs that a baby is ready to start eating solid food. Readiness for solids includes a baby can grasp objects and bring them to mouth. A baby can hold their head steady. Baby shows an interest in eating by leaning toward food, mouthing, watching others eat. And finally, baby needs minimal support to sit upright. Figure 3.9. Each part of the neuron plays a role in communication between the brain and body. Neurons are responsible for receiving, interpreting, and sending electrochemical messages across the nervous system. It is made up of these tree branch-like structures, otherwise known as the dendrite, that receive these messages. We have the cell membrane, as well as the cell body, otherwise known as the soma. That information will travel across the axon with the assistance from the myelin sheath, and then will end up at the terminal buttons, ready to send on further neurotransmitters. Figure 3.10. The gaps between neurons are called synapses. So the synapses receive those neurotransmitters. Then we have 4 lobes of the brain. I like to remember it by the acronym FPOT because drugs are bad. We have the frontal lobe, which is responsible for decision-making, problem-solving, as well as judgment. There are areas important in the frontal lobe for language production. You have the parietal lobe, which interpret a lot of your senses. You have the occipital lobe at the very back of the brain. That's crucial for vision processing. And then you have the temporal lobe, which includes items like Wernicke's area that is responsible for understanding what people are saying to you, understanding language and speech. Then we have table 3.4, vaccine preventable diseases. The first vaccine that we'll talk about is for hepatitis B. Infants can contract hepatitis B from infected mothers during the birth process or through exposure to infected bodily fluids. The hepatitis B vaccine is recommended for all infants and is typically given within the first 24 hours after birth. Rotavirus is a common cause of diarrhea and vomiting in infants and young children. The rotavirus vaccine is recommended for all infants and is typically given in a series of 2 or 3 doses, depending on the vaccine used. DTaP. These bacterial infections can cause serious illness in infants and young children. The DTaP vaccine which protects against all three, is recommended for all infants and is typically given in a series of 5 doses. Polio. Polio is a viral infection that can cause paralysis and death. The polio vaccine is recommended for all infants and is typically given in a series of 4 doses. HIV. This bacterial infection can cause serious illnesses such as meningitis and pneumonia in infants and young children. The HIV vaccine is recommended for all infants and is typically given in a series of 3 or 4 doses. Pneumococcal disease. This bacterial infection can cause a range of illnesses, including pneumonia, meningitis, and ear infections. The pneumococcal vaccine is recommended for all infants and is typically given in a series of 4 doses. Measles, mumps, and rubella, MMR. These are 3 infections that can cause serious illness or even death in infants and young children. The MMR vaccine protects against all 3 illnesses and is given in 2 doses, at 12 to 15 months and again at 4 to 6 years of age. Varicella. The varicella vaccine prevents chickenpox and is administered in 2 doses, at 12 to 15 months and again at 4 to 6 years of age. 3.2 Motor development in infants and toddlers. Here's what we're going to look into. We're going to describe infants' reflexes, identify the typical milestones of motor development, distinguish between gross and fine motor skills, and explain influences on motor development in infancy and toddlerhood. Table 3.5 Newborn reflexes. We're going to look at the reflex, the description, and the average age at which reflex disappears. Stepping is first. This is whenever newborns make stepping motions with the sole of their feet, touches a hard surface, disappears around 2 months. Moro, arms fling sideways with palms up as if in a falling motion, disappears at 2 to 4 months. Rooting, turn the head to side, open mouth wide, and make sucking motion when stroked on the cheek. That's 3 to 4 months. Palmar grasp, grasps a finger placed in the palm, disappears between 3 to 6 months. Swimming, kicking, and make swimming motions if they place face down in water, 4 to 6. Sucking, sucks when something is in the mouth at 4 months. That tends to disappear. Tonic neck assumes fencer stance when relaxed and lying face up if someone turns head to side at 6 months. Plantar, curls toes in when finger is placed below them, disappears around 9 to 12 months. Babinski, toes fan out when foot is stroked at 12 months. But things like blinking, coughing, gagging, and sneezing, those all stay. Figure 3.12. Newborn reflexes include, as shown in Example A, the Moro reflex, similar to a falling response. Figure B, the palmar reflex when infants grasp an object in their palm. The rooting reflex, as shown in Image C, and in Image 4, the tonic reflex. Table 3.6, average age range for muscle control milestones in the first 2 years. We're going to look at the muscle control milestone first and then the age range expected. First one is supporting the head at 6 to 8 weeks old, lifts head and chest when on tummy at 2 to 5 months, rolls from tummy to back from 4 to 6, sits alone and unsupported, usually happens around 4 to 8 months, stands with support 5 to 12 months, stands without support from 7 to 17 months, walks with support 6 to 13 months, and then finally walking without support from 8 to about 17 months. Now we're going to look at the average age for fine motor skills emerging in the first 2 years of life. Firstly, opens hands briefly. Average age expected is 2 months. Holds a toy when put in their hand, 4 months. Brings hands to mouth at 4 months. Reaches to grab toy at 6 months. Bangs objects together about 9 months. Transfer objects between hands 9 months. Grasp with 2 fingers at 12 months. And feeds self with fingers at 18 months. And finally tries to use buttons or switches on a toy about 24 months. Figure 3.13. One indicator that an infant may be ready for solid food, as mentioned, is the ability to pick it up with their fingers for self-feeding. This usually happens by 12 months. Table 3.8, play activities and related motor skills. We'll look at the play activity, the motor development, and then the age range. Tummy time. Spending supervised time on their tummy can help infants strengthen neck and upper body muscles. Age range is infancy. Baby gym. So playing under a play gym with hanging toys encourages babies to reach and grasp. This age range is also infancy. Mirror play. So playing with a baby-safe mirror encourages visual tracking and body awareness from 6 months to 2 years. Crawling tunnel. Crawling through a toy tunnel promotes mobility and exploration. 6 months to 1 year. Puzzles and building blocks. Interacting with age-appropriate puzzles and soft building blocks improves problem-solving skills, hand-eye coordination, and gross and fine motor skills from 6 months to 2 years. Dance and music. Moving to music strengthens balance and coordination. 6 months to 2 years. Arts and crafts. Finger painting, coloring, and cutting with safety scissors promote fine motor skills and creativity from 1 to 2 years. Obstacle courses. Engaging with a simple obstacle course with cushions, pillows, and tunnels encourages crawling, climbing, and balance from 1 to 2 years. And finally, puppet shows. Interacting with puppets enhances visual tracking and fine motor skills from 1 to 2 years. Section 3.3, Sensory Development in Infants and Toddlers. We're going to explain how sensation and perception typically develop in infants and toddlers. We're going to define the relationship between sensation and perception in infants and toddlers, and describe influences on sensation and perception among infants and toddlers. Figure 3.14. Newborns' visual acuity increases as their vision develops over the first months of life. Seeing the shapes and contrasts of a caregiver's face is an important part of growth. You can see the newborn vision, and then the vision at 8 weeks as an example, vision at 3 months, and then vision at 6 months. Figure 3.15. An infant is placed on the center of the visual cliff as the mother observes the child's depth perception and willingness to crawl to her. Section 3.4, Cognition and Memory in Infants and Toddlers. We're going to identify milestones in cognitive development in infants and toddlers. Describe the different methods for studying infant cognition. Describe the types of memory and what is known about memory development in infancy. And compare the major theories of cognitive development in infants and toddlers, as well as describe variations in cognitive development in terms of environmental factors. Figure 3.16. Assimilation fits new information into existing schemas, while accommodation rearranges, redefines, or creates schemas to make space for new information. Piaget's sensory motor development, stage 1. We're going to look at the substage, the characteristics, and the estimated age. We talked about this briefly in Chapter 1. Substage 1. Its characteristics include simple reflexes. Reflexes begin to adapt. The estimated age is birth to 1 month. Substage 2. Characteristic includes primary circular reactions. Infant repeats action with own body. Happens from 1 to 4 months. Substage 3, secondary circular reactions. The infant shifts attention to environment and explores it more from 4 to 8 months. Substage 4, coordination of secondary circular reactions. The infant starts interacting via goal-directed behavior and coordinating sensory abilities from 8 to 12 months. Substage 5, tertiary circular reactions. So the child advances to experimenting with the environment and goal-directed behavior from 12 to 18 months. And then substage 6, beginnings of thought. So the child starts to use symbolic thought, language, mental representations, and deferred imitation from 18 months to 2 years. Figure 3.17. In the substages of sensory motor development, infants learn through circular reactions. They may enjoy such activities as, seen in image A, playing with a caregiver's face to elicit a certain reaction, or in image B, squeezing a toy to produce a certain sound. Figure 3.18. When infants find the toy the first time in spot A, they show some understanding of object permanence. However, when they make the A not B error, they may show that their understanding of object permanence has not yet completely developed. This is the understanding that just because something is out of sight or covered up, we know that it still exists. Figure 319. Technologies such as EEG equipment allow researchers to study sleep and cognition in infants and toddlers. Section 3.5, Language in Infants and Toddlers. We're going to describe the differences between language and communication, identify the features of language and language development, describe the milestones of language development in infancy and toddlerhood, compare the major theories of language development, and identify factors that influence language development. Figure 320. The use of gestures, such as seen in an image A, pointing, and an image B, waving, is an aspect of communication that develops during the first year and aids in the development of language and parent-child interactions. Table 310, Summary of Infant and Toddler Language Milestones. Birth, newborns cry to communicate distress. At 2 months, infants coo as they begin to practice vocalizations. From 4 to 6 months, infants begin babbling and include consonant sounds or hand signs, and infants pay attention to communication from others and may recognize their own name. 7 to 9 months, infants begin gesturing and include the hand and body to communicate. From age 9 to 12 months, infants' first words and holophrases appear. At 16 to 24 months, the toddler telegraphic speech and vocabulary expansion begin. Figure 3.21. In the left hemisphere of the brain, Broca's area, there in the frontal lobe, is specialized for language production, actually being able to say words. And then we have Wernicke's area in the temporal lobe, which is important for language comprehension, actually understanding what people are telling you. If you need another way to remember it by, I tell my students I remember it alphabetically. Broca's area starts with a B. It's at the front of the alphabet, so it's at the frontal lobe. And then down way in the back is the W in the alphabet, which is the Wernicke's area, close to the ear. Language comprehension, understanding what people are saying. If that helps, great. That will conclude Chapter 3 of the Lifespan Development textbook provided by OpenStax and their free resources online. We thank you so much, OpenStax, and we will see you in the next one for Chapter 4. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.